The movie starts with a young man waking up in an ascending elevator. When the elevator reaches the top, a door above him opens and he's surrounded by young men. The group gathers around him, but he runs. Before reaching far, he trips and realizes that he's in a small glade surrounded by huge walls. The newcomer is then imprisoned, but Albie quickly releases him. Albie wants to know his identity, but the young man has no memories. Albie assures him that this is normal, because everyone arrived with no memories. Albie takes him on a journey around the glade, explaining how all the gladers cooperate in order to grow food and build shelters. The elevator from where he came, known as the box, is brought to them once a month to deliver anything else they need to survive, as well as a new group member. But none of them know who sent them there. When the newcomer notices an opening in the wall, Albie informs him that going beyond the walls is forbidden. Later, Chuck assists the newcomer in finding a place to sleep. Chuck informs him that they are not permitted to enter. When Minu and Ben come out from the wall, Chuck clarifies that only the runners are permitted. This attracts the newcomer interest, but Gally pushes him aside. As he panics, the rest of the group gathers. That evening, Newt explains that there are creatures known as grievers who kill anyone who gets trapped in the maze. Suddenly, Gally challenges the newcomer to spar. Gally seizes the newcomer's legs, causing him to fall and hit his head. Suddenly, the newcomer remembers that his name is Thomas. The Gladers cheer and welcome him into the group. That night Thomas has a dream. It's full of fleeting images, but a woman says, "Wicked is good." In the morning, Albie takes him for a walk. Albie then shows him the wall where everyone's names, including those who died, are carved. Thomas adds his name to the list on the wall. He tries to fit in and he's given the task to go dig up fertilizer from out in the woods. But Ben appears out of nowhere and jumps on him. Ben accuses him of something and attempts to choke him. To escape, Thomas grabs an animal bone and smashes it against Ben's head. He then returns to the glade, where Newt swings a shovel in Ben's face. The others pin Ben to the ground and lift his shirt to reveal an infected wound. There's no cure for it, so they force the boy into the maze at night, just as the doors are closing. That night, Thomas has a dream about a laboratory and a scientist who tells him the wicked is good. He sees the young woman's face again, and she promises to change everything. Thomas wakes up and finds Minu and Albie heading inside the maze to track down where Ben was stung. The Gladers wait for their arrival, but the doors quickly begin to close. Suddenly, they spot Minu carrying an injured Albie. Although the doors are almost closed, Minu is still a long way behind. Despite everyone screaming for him to cross without Albie, Thomas rushes inside and makes it to the other side, just as the doors shut. The two traverse the maze while carrying Albie. One of the grievers appears and chases after Thomas. The grievers looks like gigantic bedbugs with robot legs and scorpion tails. Thomas and the griever run around a bit as the walls in the maze change. Finally, Thomas is able to lure the griever between two walls and killed it. The maze opens the next day, and everyone is surprised to see Minu and Thomas carrying Albie back. Minu declares that Thomas murdered a griever. The next day Gally calls for a meeting of the Gladers. There's another group though, led by Gally, who feel that the rules they have were put in place to keep everyone safe, and ever since Thomas arrived, things have changed. Speaking of things changing, the elevator arrives. The boys run out to check what the elevator brought. Inside are no supplies, only a young girl. In her hand is a note that reads, "She's the last one ever." She looks up and says, "Thomas," before passing out. Thomas decides to return to the maze, but Minu stops him. Thomas points out that they've never previously captured or killed a griever, so they should look into what they're up against. Minu brings in more people to help them, after much thought. The group returns to the location where they left the griever's body. They then pull out the leg which separates. Minu discovers a device hidden within its flesh, and notices the number 7 and the label WCKD. They bring the device back to the others, and Thomas urges everyone to go back to figure out how to escape. Glade points out that Thomas should be punished because he is against breaking the law. Finally, Newt makes the decision to punish Thomas by having him spend the night in the pit. Minu takes Thomas to the runner's cabin, where they construct a maze map. He reveals that they've already mapped the entire maze, but there are no exits. Albie chose not to tell the others in order to keep hope alive, but Minu now believes they have a chance. The maze is divided into 8 sections that are symbolized by numbers. When the maze changes, it opens one section in a particular pattern. While they were inside, section 7 was open. The girl is awake. She's at the top of a tower, throwing stuff at the boys on the ground. Thomas yells up to her that it's him. She agrees to let him come up. He finds the girl holding a knife, so he calms her and explains that her memory was wiped, but in a few days she'll remember her name. She says she already remembers her name. It's Teresa. She remembers Thomas too. He tells her that he had dreams about her and a lady saying that Wicked is good. When Teresa woke up, she found 2 syringes in her pocket too, with the label WCKD. Thomas figures that it's what Wicked means. Later that evening, Thomas suggests injecting Albie with one of the syringes. When Albie begins to fight back, Teresa injects him while the others control him. Albie instantly loses consciousness. That night, Thomas deals with his punishment of being locked up. Chuck visits him and brings him some food. He also asks Thomas to give his parents a little carved statue that he made. Even though he doesn't remember his parents, he's sure his parents remember him and miss him. Thomas gives back the statue and tells Chuck that he'll be able to give that to his parents himself. Minu and Thomas rush to the maze before sunrise and discover that Section 7 is open again, despite the fact that it isn't supposed to be. Inside, they discover metal structures known as blades, as well as Ben's discarded clothes. The device they took from the Griever suddenly beeps. They follow the beeps until they reach an area that even Minu is unfamiliar with. The beeping stops and the number on the screen turns green when they reach a dead end. They walk inside after the walls suddenly open a path. They arrive at a tunnel where they are scanned by a red light. When something moves nearby, the two run away. They return to the Glade and announce that they found a new passage that could be a way out. Thomas and Glade argue until Teresa announces that Albie is awake. Albie remembers everything and informs Thomas that he has always been their favorite. Everyone's attention is drawn to the outside commotion. The maze's doors aren't closing, instead more are opening around the Glade. When the Grievers appear, everyone runs and takes cover. The Grievers kill many of the Gladers and destroy their camp. The Griever destroys the roof and grabs one of them. Chuck is kidnapped, but Thomas and Minu rescue him. Albie hacks at the Griever's arm until it snaps and pulls away. However, Albie gets captured by another Griever. Thomas grabs him, and Albie tells him to save the rest before he's taken. Suddenly, the Grievers disappear. After the attack, Thomas realizes that the venom from the Griever stings helps the victim remember. He grabs the stinger that Albie cut off from the Griever and stabs himself. Thomas remembers that the maze isn't a prison, it's a test. He sees all of the other boys in incubation tubes. A lot of them are in a panic. When he wakes up, he and Teresa are inside the pit. Newt explains that Glade has taken over and insists that anyone who doesn't join him will be banished into the maze with Thomas. Thomas confesses that he and Teresa work for the people that put them there. Although, he's uncertain why he and Teresa were sent there. Glade is furious. He and his group tie Thomas and Teresa to stakes outside the entrance to the maze as an offering. But half the group is still with Thomas, so they free them. Now the Gladers are divided. Thomas tells Glade that he'd rather die trying to escape than die in the Glade not trying. The group enters the maze, and Thomas leads them to the tunnel at Section 7. The group fights off a Griever with spears, but one is thrown over. Teresa slashes at the Griever, mistakenly causing Chuck to drop the device. Chuck leaps over and grabs it, but finds another griever climbing up. The others throw the griever off the bridge, but 2 more appear. Chuck and Teresa open the tunnel while the others fight the grievers. At the end of the tunnel, Teresa activates a security code and asks Thomas for the code. Mimi shouts out the sequence, and Teresa enters the code to unlock the door. The path's walls suddenly close in, crushing the grievers inside. Inside the tunnel, a door opens, and the survivors enter. They enter another room and discover the scientists dead. A video starts to play. The woman from earlier identifies herself as Ava Page and tells the kids that they don't remember this, but there was global devastation by something called the flare. They believe that in testing the kids, they could monitor their brains and find a cure. While she speaks, behind her guerrilla soldiers rush in and start killing other scientists. She tells them she's glad they passed the first test, and reminds them that Wicked is good. Before signing off, Paige shoots herself in the head. Thomas discovers her body in a different room behind them. Another door opens, but no one enters. Gally appears out of nowhere, but he's been stung. He points a gun at Thomas, and claims that they are part of the maze. Chuck pushes Thomas out of the way as he pulls the trigger, and Mimi launches a spear at Gally. Gally is killed, but Chuck is shot. Chuck returns the toy to Thomas and thanks him for giving him a chance. Chuck dies soon after, and Thomas weeps. Armed people storm in and drag them outside. Thomas is thrown into a helicopter with the others in the desert. As the helicopter flies over the maze, the people assure them that they are safe. In the final shot, it is shown that Paige is alive and wiping fake blood off her head. She says that the kids have taken the bait. More kids survive than she anticipated. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notifications on my new videos.